it'll give you this error message, and it'll look kind of like this. So if I want to debug, if I'm concerned about something, let's say I have some of this code here, I can add a debug line to this line of code. So I can say, hey, I want to stop here when we run execution. I'll run using the debugger, which is the little bug picture instead of the run button, and it'll stop execution and wait for me on that line. So I can actually make it stop, so I don't actually have to put in all the system dead outs that I usually would. I can kind of stop where I need to stop. So I have a couple options here. Again, I'm going over this because I had a couple of questions from folks. Let's look at our first program. So this is just really basic code. We have a main method. Let's say I want to stop here before execution. I'm going to double click right here to the left of the line numbers. It's setting up a breakpoint. Those little blue bubbles are breakpoints. If I run this class, it'll run on its own and it won't stop at the breakpoint. So it went ahead and ran and printed hello. But if I want to stop at the breakpoint, I need to run with the debug. So I click the little bug button. It'll ask me this question. It says, this kind of launch is configured for debugging purposes. So basically you want to say yes, and if you don't hit remember my decision, it'll ask you every time. But I just wanted to be able to showcase it to you guys. This is the debugging perspective. So when your code's debugging and it's stopped, you're going to see this kind of come up, and it gives you a lot of different options. One, it moved your outline over here. It shows your console down here still. I can see that my program's still running because I have a red thing here. And I can see where I'm at in the code. One, because it highlights which line I'm at. It stopped at my breakpoint. Two, because I can see this trace, this stack, basically the call stack right now in Java. So I can see what the JVM is doing for me. And what's also really nice is I can see variables. So if you keep running your code and you find that, man, I cannot figure out why this is happening for this reason, or I don't know why it keeps printing this, it might be a good idea to stop, and then you can see what's currently contained. So for example, H is a string, and it contains this stuff, and its ID is something that I don't actually really need. I don't need its ID in Java. We're not really caring about some of the memory address allocation. I can see args. So args is going to be that string array args that we pass into every main method, but there's nothing inside of it. So if I were expecting user input into that thing, and I didn't have any, this would be a good time to stop and see that string array is 0, so its length is 0. And anything that's null will say null here. So I'll know automatically if I keep getting a null pointer exception for some reason, I'll be able to see it there. And then I have choices. I can either hit the play button to kind of resume and run the entire rest of the program. I can hit the stop button to completely terminate and not execute anything, so it won't do the print statement at all. Or I can step a few ways. So I can I can go into this method and execute line by line each piece of that code. I never really want to do this if the code's not mine, so I don't ever want to step into system.out.println because it's going to bring me into the Java library, and line by line I'll print, do everything. I don't want to do that. But I can step over. Step over means go ahead and execute this one line and then stop at the next line. So step by step. So especially in your team projects, if you just cannot figure out why something's crashing or why something's not working right or whatever, set up a whole bunch of these little blue dots and then run it in debug mode and see what happens. You might be able to step into something and show yourself the error first. I know it's convenient to print out messages down at the bottom in the console, but sometimes it just gets overwhelming, especially with 3 or 4 of you all working on the same project at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll run this, and then it just kind of prints hello and it stops execution because that was the end of the program. Now once I'm in here, I'm in debug perspective, so I'm in the view for debugging. If I want to get back, I'm going to go up to the top right corner, hit the Java perspective. I can always go back to debugging later, either by debugging my code or clicking on the bug button. You won't see the bug button to start with because it didn't open up that perspective, but you'll get it once you debug something for the first time. These 2 perspectives are the only ones we touch in this class. But I'll tell you what, I had at least 15 other perspectives on most of my development environments for other positions. So there's lots of other perspectives that are out there, and a lot of shops set up their own customized perspectives. So USA, for example, has a bank perspective. Everything you need to be able to do stuff on one part of the bank. and one thing for P&C, property and casualty. So one part of like life, for example, property and casualty kind of insurance, you'll have a different perspective for it. So you can get to all the database connections, the network connections, you can see the code that you need, you can see when things are going to production, what version you're at, how things are working, your JUnit test cases, everything's in one perspective for you. Very convenient, very nice and organized. So our version of this is kind of like the really clean, bare bones version where we're just still building simple applications, but just know that that's coming. So if you want to switch back and forth, you're going to go up here, and if you can't switch back and forth because something's missing, you click this little plus button, you can hit open perspective, and if you have the default installation, like I do for Oxygen, you just have a few options. So you can choose any of these other things, but we're really not using them. We're not using XML. You can open the Git perspective though, that's something that we do use in this class. So if you want to see your Git repository kind of stuff, you'd be able to do that. But you'll see a whole bunch of other things. As you install different plugins in Eclipse, you will be able to see web views, you can see database connection views. All of that will be installed under Help, Install New Software. So we asked you to do this for your JavaFX. We had you connect it to the Eclipse plugin for JavaFX. You'll have to do this more in the future, probably definitely in software engineering when you start using XML and potentially JSON. So when they have you actually start implementing different things and adding extra plugins to Eclipse, you'll go to Help, Install New Software, and you'll follow the prompt to install the new software that you want. You shouldn't go in there by default and just start installing things because it does start messing with your workspace. But if you need something and you know specifically that you need it, you'll have a link to it, you'll know which version you need, you know why you need it, what it's going to interact with, what it'll mess up, so on and so forth. To remove my breakpoints, I'm going to double click on it again. To add them back in, I'll double click on it. So you get the idea with the breakpoints. Are there any questions debugging?